Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Paradigm Shifts podcast with your host, Keisha Kruger. I'm an organization development practitioner and executive coach, working with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. My personal mission? Share science-based tools and leadership insights from the field that you can use in the workplace and beyond. Considering we spend about 3/4 of our lifetime at work, there is incredible science and organizational psychology that could be used to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. Join me as I speak with thought leaders and business leaders in practice, unpacking light bulb moments for paradigm shifts. On this week's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Rogell. He is a best-selling author, podcast host, documentary filmmaker, sought-after speaker, and an award-winning journalist. He has traveled the world writing about gear, tech, cars, and adventure travel for publications including Discovery.com, Men's Fitness, and more. Eric has interviewed hundreds of celebrities, athletes, entrepreneurs, military vets, and others, getting them to dive deep into their stories and all of the lessons, challenges, and triumphs that have made them the success they are today. Valuable insights that paint a picture of what great leaders are made of and how critical it is to have strong, influential mentors to guide us along the path. This inspired Eric to personally share his wisdom over the past 20 years and mentor dozens of ambitious men and women driven to accelerate their lives and careers. His company, Mentors on Mission, show organizations how to use the impact of mentoring to dramatically improve their business. Eric's next book, Lions Raised as Lambs, will be released in October. For more information about how to reach Eric or to learn more about his services, view the show notes. Enjoy! Hi, Eric. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Keisha, how are you? It's great to be here.
Great, thank you. I'm excited to talk with you about mentoring. You have a lot of experience with mentor programs, developing and creating those types of programs. And what I think is something that's really an important concept to capture in this talk is the value of mentoring overall and the different types of mentoring. And why is it so important for leaders and organizations to institute mentorship programs? So just to kick us off, can you talk to me a little bit about what your experience has been with mentor programs in the past or current?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's so many different types of mentoring that I've been through. I've experienced personal mentoring. I have a personal mentor now. I've had other people who've been incredible mentors and role models at different parts of my life. I've had mentors who were coaches in organized sports. I mean, it goes all the way down the line. These people that have had impact and influence on our lives. I've been in companies where they had a semi um, organized mentoring program. It's usually been someone who's kind of stepped up and taken me under their wing, we'll say. And
Mm-hmm.
then I've had the experience of putting these programs into businesses and the impact that they can have, deliberately having a focused mentoring program in a company. So I've had many experiences all the way down the line on the mentoring. But the one thing that I will say is the impact that it's had on me and my growth and the acceleration in my growth that I've seen by having someone who's just been a little bit ahead of me on the path, kind of
Mm-hmm.
shown me how to get there, has been amazing. But the one thing that I've really found also is when I mentor someone, and this goes across the board and they've done studies, when you mentor someone else, your own growth and your own career acceleration get multiplied by
Yeah.
doing that. So it actually does benefit both sides. So that's been kind of fun to find.
So it's a mutually beneficial relationship, right? It serves both the mentor, the mentee. It accelerates growth on both sides.
Mhm.
I love how you talked about mentors being not just in the workplace, right? We hear that often in the workplace, but it also spans and blends out into our personal lives. And you talked about sports a little bit there and other areas of our lives. When you think about some of the most valuable mentorship programs that you've seen in an organization, what does that look like?
I think the best thing and what I do when I go into a company and I talk about putting in a mentoring program is number one, the biggest reason mentoring programs fail in
Mm,
companies is not because they don't have good mentors or people who want to be mentors. And one of the things I'll say is mentoring comes from here. It
mhm.
really is a very purposeful thing. When you can see the greatness in another person and want to do whatever you can to unlock and unleash that greatness and really have them become who they're meant to be, it's an amazing thing. And there's no shortage of people in any organization who really want to do that, who have an altruistic, I really want to help somebody. What makes them fail is they don't have a foundation, they don't have a framework
Mm,
under which the mentor can work. So it's kind of like, hey, you want to be a mentor? Great. Go show, so and so how to do this. It's not really mentoring. Mentoring really comes from how are you guiding this person through their career? So it's little things they need to know, stuff that's going to accelerate them faster, tricks. I don't want to say tricks, but, tips, strategies, things they can use. Um, Things that happen in your line of work or your business that you really can't learn in a book, that you have to have someone with the wisdom and experience to guide you, but you still have to have some sort of framework underneath that to guide these people. And so when I put one in, I have a framework that comes on what I call the three legs of the stool. So one is attention. So it's about attention and having, where is your attention, and putting your attention on them, and how do you focus your attention? How many times a week, a month, a year are you getting together with your mentee? I have the four foundational archetypes of the warrior, the lover, the king, queen, and the hero. And those are the different archetypes that guide the different parts of our lives and who we are inside us. And with the mentor can work within that framework, it gives them a solid base on what to do. And then the fourth is what I call, it's a takeoff on the golden rule. The golden rule being do unto others as you had do unto you. It's really the golden mentoring rule, which is be the mentor you wish you had guided you.
oh,
So
that's
what things do
huge.
you wish you knew coming in? What things, would have accelerated you faster? What really great, nuggets of wisdom did you gather over your years that you can share with someone else to move them along faster? So those kind of things in there really help. And then there's other things, milestones, and how do you celebrate certain wins and victories, and how do you guide those? But those are the things I think that really make a program work. You've got to treat it like any other program within a company. There's
Mhm.
got to be someone overseeing it. There's got to be a framework to work within, guidelines, rules, check-ins, accountability, all of that. But when you have that, then you have these incredible mentors, these people that really from here want to help others. You're going to have a very successful program.
So it sounds like where organizations miss the mark is setting up a container to hold the space for which good mentorship can occur, right? Is that what
Yeah.
I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love that because it is, so many times you'll say like, all right, well, we're going to get some mentors. Who wants to be a mentor? Raise your hand. You want to be, okay, great. You and you
Right.
and you and you and you and you. And then they just let them go. Right. And the mentor may, at the beginning, it's great because they've got wisdom and they're sharing but you want this to continue over time. So it's,
Mm.
how do we institute certain guidelines, frameworks, foundations, containers, whatever you want to call it, so they can work within this. And then who do the mentors turn to? Because they may need some guidance as well. So that's why, having someone overseeing it where they can turn and go, this came up within one of our conversations. I didn't know how to handle it, that kind of thing. You need some of that help. Because, one key thing I just want to get this out there: mentors are not life coaches. They're not,
Mm.
counselors. They're not there to solve problems. They're there to guide and direct and help grow. So,
So,
yeah, so that has to, be understood as well.
yeah, would you say the biggest difference between a mentor and other type of supporting roles is that they are there to guide and direct, not to explore past childhood traumas, like as a therapist would, right? Or a coach they might incorporate coaching techniques in their sessions, perhaps, right? Like, what do you think are the biggest differences between a mentor and some of those other supporting roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wrote an article about that, which was leaders versus coaches versus mentors, was
Mm,
basically the title. And the key thing to remember is there's not one that's better than the other, and there's not one that's needed more than another. All three are incredibly valuable. All three are really needed. But when you look at a leader is typically running an organization or a project or a program. They're the person in charge.
hmm.
And they're kind of guiding the whole thing, the whole project, the whole company, the whole organization. That's their job. So it's all encompassing. A coach may be someone who's helping you with a specific part of either your job or your life. So think about, like, I always say Tiger Woods had a swing coach, right? And he may have had a mental coach, mindset coach. He may have had a physical coach to train him in getting his body in better shape, even though he was the best in the world at what he did. He had these
Hmm.
individual coaches that helped him with particular parts of his game. So if you look at coaches in your own life, you might have a business coach, you might have a life coach, you might have a mindset coach, a fitness coach, a nutrition coach, whatever it is. But that's that one specific thing where they're helping you in that skill set. And then
Hmm.
you have a mentor, and a mentor is typically someone who is guiding you specifically and your path. So it could be, and usually it's both life and in work. There's someone you can turn to for guidance, someone you can turn to who's just been, like I said earlier, on the path ahead of you,
Hmm.
that can show you the ropes, show you the way, get you from, kind of going off track into the weeds and get you back on the path. That's what a mentor does. So imagine now if in an organization, you had leadership at the top, really strong, good leadership at the top. You had individual coaches who may help people in the organization with specific skill sets. And you had mentors who were there to help guide and accelerate the growth and development of individuals in the company. Just imagine how powerful that organization would be with all of
So
them.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you clearly define the roles because that's truly what they are. They're different roles that you would
Mhm.
play in helping someone become successful. And it's critical when you think about the blendedness of those roles in an organization and how they can overlap and the value that a mentor brings that I think is different than the other roles that you were mentioning is that it's kind of like that third party, unbiased person that you can go to when it comes to even company culture or climate,
Mhm.
right? Trying to get an understanding of the stakeholders within the organization, organizational politics, office politics, things like that. How do I navigate relationships with certain people in the organization? Would you say that that's a additional benefit that the mentor role kind of helps
Oh,
support?
huge benefit, huge. I say mentorship and mentoring programs and mentors in your organization help create what I call unquittable corporate cultures,
Hmm.
because now you feel like someone actually cares about you as an individual. And typically, you may um, pair up the mentor and mentee according to culture, according to experience, according to any number of metrics, or not metrics, but demographics or sociographics or any of those things. You can pair them up, and now it's like, wow, there's somebody in the organization who I would like to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? So I'm in there with
Hmm.
them, and it seems like the company really, really cares about me. Study after study after study has been done on the impact of mentorship in organizations, formal mentorship in organizations, and part of it is the retention in the company is increased because they
Wow.
feel like they've got somebody there. And a key thing I want to mention is I usually will tell the mentors confidentiality on what's discussed is paramount. It's key because they can't
Yeah.
trust you, and trust is a major thing with a mentor. You've got to absolutely trust your mentor. And if you feel like anything you say to them, they're going to go running back to leadership and tell them,
Hmm.
well, Keisha said she was really not happy with so and so, and they were making her life. It's going to cause an issue. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
confidentiality is there when they feel they've got a confidant within the company, someone who's got a vested interest in their growth. Why would they leave? I had
Hmm.
a real estate broker who I was working with, and he actually told his people he was going to mentor them to become their own broker. So he had a lot of young agents coming into his brokerage, and he said, "I will help you, mentor you to help you become your own broker, start your own brokerage within 2 years." And a few
Wow.
of them have said to him, if you were helping me do that, why would I want to leave you? This would be the place I'd want to work forever, right? I've got somebody who knows more that's helping me become more successful. So it really does help that in an organization. When you've got that connection, we'll say, between mentor and mentee, I mean, it helps retention. It also helps attract
Hmm.
better talent, the best talent, because they're like, wow, this is going on at this organization. I'm going to have an opportunity to grow and grow faster than if I went to this organization. So it helps attract top talent, retain top talent, create, we talked about growth and accelerated growth, but also that corporate culture that we talked about. So many impactful benefits by having these kind of things in your company and organization.
Yeah, and typically mentorship programs, or at least mentor relationships, how they're set up, or at least perceived, is more of a senior member mentoring a more new member, right? Not as experienced member of the organization. I want to dig into this concept that's kind of been a little bit more newer in trend, is the concept of reverse mentoring.
Yeah.
So when a younger, less experienced, younger generation employee is actually mentoring someone who is more of a senior member of the organization. Not to say that the individual who's a younger generation is less experienced, right? But
Hmm.
they have a certain experience, skill set that they could offer that more senior member. Maybe it's around technology, or it's around developing strategies, or what have you. Talk to me a little bit about your experience with reverse mentoring and kind of what you've seen come out of that.
Yeah, it's so great. Reverse mentoring is awesome, and I first heard about it. It was Jack Welch, who was the legendary CEO of GE, and instituted so many great programs. He was one of the first that I knew of that did institute reverse mentoring in GE, and it happened in the 90s when technology and the internet and everything was starting to grow, and he kind of saw that this was going to be the future. What they realized was the younger employees of the company were taking to the technology much quicker. They were understanding it. They were getting it. The more senior and older employees were kind of resisting it. It was new. It was strange. They didn't understand it. They didn't want to deal with it. And so they instituted a reverse mentoring program where they actually had the younger employees mentoring the older in technology and the internet and how to use
Right.
it and what it meant and the benefits of it. And what was great about it is, and I found this, and I'll tell you another story here in a second, but what
Yeah.
they found was that it increased not only the more senior, their skill set in terms of the internet, but the understanding and the connection between the different generations actually got stronger. And
Mm.
that's a beautiful kind of byproduct of this because, the whole thing now with like, okay, boomer and, Gen X and the millennials and now Gen Z and all this kind of separation. I was speaking with a good friend of mine. She and her husband live in a very rural area of Wisconsin. They become good friends, and I've been kind of helping her some of the business things that they're doing. And one of the things they found was that in their rural areas, a lot of the younger people are moving out. So you have a much older generation living there that's lived there their whole lives. They're not going to leave. But the younger generation actually, they're frustrated. It's not as, cool to live there as it is in some of the cities. And they just want to go to college and get out and they don't come back. And I was working with them to institute a reverse mentoring program where we would pair up these younger, late teens with some of the more senior people who are living there, who've lived there their whole lives. And what they found was once they started talking and sat them down with each other and they started, the younger would help the olders with technology and that kind of thing. And the older ones would help the younger ones understand the history of the town and what it meant to work the land and be out in nature and not, live a quieter life. the understanding became so much deeper
Mm-hmm.
and the connection became so much deeper. And so doing a reverse mentoring program in your organization, let's just say, really millennials are a big part of the workforce right now, and Gen Z is coming
Mm-hmm.
in, and Gen X and boomers are moving to get them together and really kind of get those generations connecting. I mean, imagine what that
Mm-hmm.
does for an organization when you can have that kind of mutual respect and understanding and connection.
Bridging the gap between those
Mm.
generations, huge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just another just value of mentoring overall, we talk about the concept of, as we think about generations moving out of the organization and phasing out, the opportunity to transfer that wealth of knowledge that exists at the more senior level generations before they exit the organization for retirement is so critical. And without a formal structured mentoring program, how do you really effectively transfer that knowledge, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I just made a quick note while we were talking, and I wrote down something that I always like to share when I talk, and I call them our big, beautiful battle scars, right? And it's those things that we've experienced that may not have seemed ideal on the surface, right? So it might have been a failure or a misstep or a mistake or something truly embarrassing or what we consider shameful. And in my world, none of that exists. There are no real big mistakes. There are no missteps. These are just battle scars that we've earned through experience. And there's a great quote that I always use, and it's from, I believe his name is Anthony David Williams. And he wrote in a book on education, he said, uh, knowledge comes from learning, wisdom comes from living. And so these big, beautiful battle scars that we have
Wow.
from these experiences, this wisdom that we have, needs to be passed on. So I tell,
Mm-hmm.
people that I work with all the time, some of your biggest failures and mistakes and most like cringe-worthy moments are the most valuable to the people in your organization,
Yeah.
right? And that I think goes to what you just mentioned, Keisha, about how does this get passed on? Because if there isn't anybody talking about the mistakes that have been made, talking about the missteps openly and honestly and
Right.
fully, and sharing these big beautiful battle scars, then the people coming in are destined to make those same mistakes.
Same
So
mistakes.
having these mentors and having that mutual trust where you could say, hey, listen, I always tell everybody I got hired years ago at an online entertainment company as the art director and web designer. And I didn't really know a whole lot about web design, but they didn't know that. I figured I could learn it before I took the job. But I got in there and they told me, this was back in the days when you used to do FTP and you had to transfer files back and
Transfer.
forth to
Mm-hmm.
work on them. And they were like, look, make sure you do this before you do that, before you do this. And I was doing yeah, 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 I got it. And then I basically wiped out 2 years worth of work. I was sitting in my office and I saw people running and scrambling, and I'm like, wow, something crazy just happened. And then the CEO of the company came in and did one of these, and he said,
Uh-oh.
did you do XYZ? And I said, I don't think I did. And he said, you just wiped out 2 years of work. It took over 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to put everything back because they had to, they had all the tech people go back and try to find the backup files and piece it back together. But I basically told him I was going to resign, and he said, why? So someone else can come in here and make the same mistake you did?
Oh,
Like,
that's so
you learn.
powerful.
So now my
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I always tell that story now. Hey, listen, when you're doing this, pay attention because here's what I did. And it almost
Mm-hmm.
cost me my job. Anyone else who was less understanding than that guy, and to his credit, that was great. I believe there's a story about the CEO of IBM did something similar with someone who made a multi-million dollar mistake. And he said, we just spent millions of dollars educating you. Why would we fire you now? Same lines, because that was a battle scar that I had. So that's what I think some of this value is when you have that trust and you can tell those stories and be open and vulnerable and honest with each other. That wisdom that you're talking about will get passed down before these people retire and move on.
It's so powerful. I never considered that before in the the technique of mentoring to connect it to a personal story, like a lived experience, right?
Oh, sure.
Because that deepens the impact, that deepens the knowledge that you're passing along to that mentee, because then now they can see themselves with some empathy, see themselves in your shoes and say to them, I don't want to be in that. I don't want to get that from the CEO. So it does give some additional perspective instead of just saying, here's what I did. No,
Mhm.
this is the story beyond that. I think that's really powerful.
Oh, and you're right. It is. It's truly powerful. And the thing is, it's it's one of those things that just lends so much more to who you are as a person. When you can just be
Hmm.
open and vulnerable and share that kind of stuff. I mean, that's powerful. To me, in my world, that's operating in that king and queen archetype, right? It's that having that authority, having that command. But the other thing that it does also is, when I talk about sharing wisdom, one of the things I tell my people is you're sharing wisdom, not advice or opinion. This is crucial for mentors. You're sharing wisdom, not advice or opinion. So that wisdom, like I said, comes from experience, right? Comes from living. So when you can share a story and say, you know what, Keisha, if I was mentoring you, how would it feel if I said to you, you know what, Keisha, you know what you should do? You should do this, and then you should do that. And I feel that, the best thing for you is this and this and this.
Hmm.
Right. Immediately it's kind of like, whoa, 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 who are you? And I don't, I want to do this and you're telling me I should do that. And I'm not, and a lot of people will do that because they want to make you in their own image and they want to tell you what you should do and all of these things. The difference when you're offering and sharing wisdom would be something along the lines of, Keisha, when I was in your shoes and I started, here's what happened to me. I did this and this happened. And then here's what I did about it. And then here's the result that came out of it. And now you can take from that whatever you want and kind of plug it into your own life moving forward, right? So I've shared an experience and a story, told you what happened, what the results were that I got, and then you can make the decision on that from there. So basically, I'm coming from my king and helping you create your queen, right? Moving forward in these paths.
Hey everyone, I want to take just a quick break from this week's chat to tell you about something very exciting. It's something for those of you who listen to my podcast that train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and it's called BJJ Summer Week. So, what is it? Imagine participating in one of the biggest BJJ community camps in the world and training amongst hundreds of other BJJ practitioners. People coming from all around the world with the willingness to share their culture and their knowledge of BJJ with each other. That's what BJJ Summer Week is all about. It's 5 days of seminars, parties, excursions, incredible food, and more in the capital of the Mediterranean, Cagliari, Sardinia. And the next BJJ Summer Week is happening next year from September 20th to the 24th of 2023. If this is something you'd be interested in joining, there is an early bird special if you book now on www.bjjsummerweek.com. If you book by December 31st with the code Paradigm Shifts, you'll get a tatami gi for free. You have the right to cancel the camp before 30th of May for any reason. I'll be there. I'm so excited to go next year. I was there last year. So what are you waiting for? Get your BJJ friends together and start the planning. Book today. Join BJJ Summer Week. Now, let's get back to this week's chat. I can't let you pass on any further without telling me a little bit more about these archetypes. I'm glad you circled
Sure.
back there because that was a
All
question.
right.
Talk
Good.
to me about. I know this is your model. This is your
Mhm.
framework. I want to hear more. Like, what are these archetypes about?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked that because it is basically what I call the software of our soul. So if you're familiar with or ever heard the term the hero's journey, we've all heard this, right? It's been
Mhm.
overused to death. But there actually is a specific hero's journey, and it was developed by a man named Joseph Campbell. He wrote a couple of phenomenal books. One is The Power of Myth, and the other was The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And basically, what he was laying out in his books, and he was a professor of mythology. And what he was laying out was that every story ever told is every story ever told. All the myths, all these heroic stories, all follow a similar structure. And he laid it out. And you can go look it up online, look at the hero's journey. It's a circle, right? And interestingly enough, when the hero goes on the path, the first thing that they encounter is the mentor, which is very critical, which is why I love his interpretation of the journey. But essentially, the journey is this, and we've seen it in every story from, the great myths, Hercules, Perseus, all of these, all the way up to modern myths like Star Wars and even the Lion King, Harry Potter. They all follow the same structure. Um, there's an old joke that J.K. Rowling didn't write Harry Potter; she rewrote Star Wars. And when you look at it,
Yeah.
they have the same structure. And Star Wars is really just, George Lucas had said he wanted to create a space myth, and he became very close friends with Joseph Campbell. And he kind of used this formula. But essentially, it is, and feel into any story that you've ever heard, there is the protagonist who becomes the eventual hero. And the protagonist has what they call the call to adventure. They're told they're the one, or they're special, or there's some journey they must encounter. They typically resist it. They don't want to go on it, but then they eventually do. They go into what's called the descent. The mentor shows up, could be a magical mentor. In Star Wars, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. In Harry Potter, it's Dumbledore, right? It's all, you can go back and look at all of these when that magical mentor appears. They face a series of challenges. So in order to face these challenges, they have to tap into the first of the archetypes, the warrior. And that warrior side of us is the thing that gets us moving, gets us going, pushes us into and up against and eventually conquering our challenges. And that's things like our warrior encompasses things like courage, boldness, leadership, adventure, risk taking, um, guardian, steward, decisive, all of these things that move us forward. You must tap into your warrior for that. And that happens at the beginning of this hero's journey. The first thing they have to do is tap into that warrior side, tap into that courage, that boldness, that sense of adventure, and get moving. Along the path, they start to, conquer their challenges. They may find their life's purpose. They may find true love. This happens in a lot of stories. The hero will find their true love. That's when they open up, and I believe it's called something of the goddess. Like it's escaping me now, but the gift of the goddess is what Campbell called it, the gift of the goddess. When you think of that, that is our lover side, our heart, right? So the heart begins to open up. And when I first started this work, I thought that was weak. Like it felt weak to me, but it's not. It's incredibly powerful. So that lover side, heart side of us is wisdom, which we've been talking about. Wisdom comes from that heart. Wisdom and playfulness and creativity and abundance and joy and compassion and passion and all of these things that make life so juicy and good and abundant and fulfilled happen on that lover side. And then when the hero of the story eventually returns home, because again, I said it was a circular path, if you look at it, what Campbell came up with, when they return home, it's what they call the return as the king or queen, meaning they have fully integrated their warrior side and their lover side. You can't live one or the other, must be both. And when you can take that warrior side of you, the one that's driven and purposeful and all of that and ambitious and everything, and then pair it and integrate it with your lover side of wisdom and creativity and joy and abundance and compassion and empathy and all of those amazing things together, that's when you're operating from king and queen. And that's when they return home in the story. And then hero is the king or queen who has dropped doing for self and for kingdom and now does for others altruistically, purely from the heart. And that is heroic. So those are the four. So to me, a mentor is heroic because they are doing for another for no
Yeah.
purpose other than to see that other person live their greatness. So to me, mentors are truly heroic. So those are the four. And hopefully that it kind of explains it to you and you kind of get an understanding of how now when you're mentoring someone in their career and in their life, helping them tap into that warrior when they need to, when they're facing a challenge and they're feeling kind of down, more warrior, the lover side, the wisdom, the creativity, the appreciation, honor, all of those things, and then making sure they have that integrated so they can become a king or queen within your organization.
That just the entire story, all of the archetype descriptions really painted the picture. Now I can appreciate the structure that you were talking about when you are instituting a formal program in an organization, because that role that a mentor plays, you aren't an effective great mentor from day one. It takes time, it takes practice,
Mm.
and to have some of that understanding those archetype descriptions, the story behind it, gives you a playbook, right? In terms of how to guide the mentee. And I love how you put mentor as the heroic, because they are serving beyond themselves. Like their mission is to expand, higher than themselves, be self-actualized, and all of that goodness and potential. So powerful, and I love that you dropped some Harry Potter references, because I'm nerding out over here. That's my thing. I love Harry Potter,
Yeah.
and I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't care if anyone judges
And you
me
know
for
why
that.
you love it? And I'm not going to say why you love it, but why we love it. Because I love the story too. That was one of those things where, I had heard when the books came out, everyone was just, like you said, geeking out about Harry Potter. And as a writer and a creator myself, I was like, this can't be. Like, this got to be overhyped. There's no way. And then I started reading the books and I was like, wow,
Mm,
J.K. Rowling is a generational talent. Like, this is just
yeah.
amazing the way it's laid out. But then once I got into more of the, warrior, lover, king, hero, and the hero's journey and the structures, I was like, it is, like I said, the software of our soul. It speaks to us.
Hmm.
It's hardwired into us. It's why we love these myths. We love these stories. We love the legends. And Harry Potter is simply a modern myth. It's just a beautifully written modern myth, as is Star Wars and that whole saga. And it's why we connect so well to them, because it taps us into our warrior side, our lover side, our king and queen, and the hero
Hmm.
that's within all of us. So I'm glad you geek out on Harry Potter. It's beautiful.
Thank you. So I'm just thinking now, if I'm an organization leader and I'm approaching you to get some support on mentoring in the company, building a formal program, how would you recommend to me that we choose the mentors? And
Mm.
the process where the mentee chooses the mentor as well, I think needs to be addressed and acknowledged. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that this is the critical part, right? So you want to make sure that people are paired up. So first you need to find your pool of mentors who are willing, right? Because you don't want a
Willing.
mentee going in and go, well, I want Bob to be my mentor. And then Bob's like, I don't have time or desire. Now you're dragging
Hmm.
somebody through. I have found that a lot of times, even in informal groups, the mentor and the mentee, just there's like a natural kind of attraction, like a magnetism. Like they have a rapport with each other. They have a connection already. And it's just kind of now a matter of more formalizing it, right? And just saying, okay, this
Hmm.
is how we're going to handle this. In an organization, yeah, I would get the mentors first. That way, your pool of people. Who are they willing? And then you can start looking at um, who do they match with? Who are they similar to in terms of any of the demographics, psychographics, any of those things you're looking at? Could be gender based, could be um, I've had mentors, mentees, sexual orientation in organizations where they're like, wow, there's somebody like me that has the same orientation I do who's in an executive position that makes me feel like I can grow into that.
Right.
Different races, religion, any of those things that we look at in terms of people that can get them there, because you want everyone to be comfortable and you want them to be able to have
Hmm.
these open, honest, vulnerable conversations.
Goes back to
And
the trust that you were talking about.
100%. They have to trust them. They have to be able to connect with them. So I would say before you go, okay, you're the mentor, you're the mentee, you kind of just let people kind of mix and mingle. You make it known. Here's the pool of people who are willing to mentor. And I would make it so it's not a race to get to that person first, because there are mentors who are perfectly happy mentoring more than one person. This isn't like
Hmm.
it's one on one, but it doesn't have to be only this one. My
Okay.
mentor mentors other people as well. It's just, he's got enough attention where he can mentor several people. So you may have a mentor who's got two or three people in the organization. And if they're willing to do that, awesome. Awesome. And then you may have a thing where a mentee comes and says, look, for some reason, I'm really looking at Mary. She's amazing. She's who I really connect with. I would love to see if she's willing to be a mentor to me. And then you can approach Mary if she hasn't volunteered for the program and let her know. And listen, it's a flattering thing, right? When someone says, I really admire you and respect you, and I would love for you to be my mentor. Um, and that may work also, because Mary might go, I didn't really want to, but now that I'm thinking about it, yes, I think I would love it because, and you can just have them go to lunch together a few times and get to know each other, and it will form on its own, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like a force, like, okay, on September 1st, you're going to be her mentor. Just allow this kind of natural relationship to build. And I have a really great story on this. I can't remember her name now, but there's a woman that I met in a networking organization, and we hit it off and we started chatting, and we just, we had a couple of phone calls, and her personal mentor was Steve Jobs from Apple. Okay. And it was a great story. She told the story because, first of all, Steve Jobs is one of my heroes. There are two people in the world that I single out as some of the greatest ever. One is Steve Jobs and one is Walt Disney, because just the vision that these men have and how they impacted and changed the world and people's lives is just off the charts. So when she said Steve Jobs was her mentor, I was like, well, how did that happen? And what it was she actually grew up in Cupertino, California, where Apple headquarters was. And this is years and years and years ago. So it was when Apple was still, they were Apple, but it wasn't iPhone Apple. It was iMac Apple. And they had a project, and it was to um, find a local business person to be your mentor for the semester. She's in high school. It's an entrepreneurship program. So she says, well, my local businessman is going to be Steve Jobs. And she finds out that he frequents this coffee shop in town. So she stakes out and starts sitting in the coffee shop every day. He
Wow.
finally comes in and she walks up to him and she says, hi, my name is, and I would like you to be, here's the project. I would like you to be my mentor. And he said, no. He said, I'm flattered, but I don't have time, and no. And she didn't take no for an answer. She kept going to the coffee shop till he came back, and she asked him again. And I don't remember how many times it took, but he finally agreed. And she said, he was my mentor, Eric, until the day he died. And not only was he her mentor, but she went to, I want to say UCLA for music production and music program. And when they started iTunes, he actually tapped her to help build and found iTunes for Apple. So it became an amazing
Wow.
opportunity for her. And she said he was an amazing, amazing man, extremely generous with his time, with his wisdom. And it just, like I said, so it wasn't one of those things where it was like, be my mentor. Okay. And now, that's how it was. It was kind of a little bit of a back and forth. She had to approach him a few times, build that trust, build that, okay, I can see where you're
Mm.
going. I can see the potential and the greatness in you. And I want to help with that. So that's kind of how it happened for her. So it can happen like that in organizations as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I heard that are really important. Criteria for mentors to become mentors is willingness, right? They have to have that
100%.
willingness and desire.
Yeah.
To your point, we'd be dragging them through if they weren't willing to participate. And also, what value would a mentee get from a mentor who is not willing, right? And
It
then the
feels
second
forced. It
piece,
feels like they have to. It's like a
yeah,
obligation rather than a coming from here. Like I
yeah,
said,
coming from there.
mentorship comes from here.
And then the other piece is just the organic, natural connection forming space, like giving that space between a mentor and a mentee to form those connections and not rush into it. So we want the mentees to select their mentors, and we want them to select them based off of common interests or potential career aspirations that are
Mhm.
similar that they want to look up to them for, or maybe there is that level of trust that you just can't put words to, but it's formed, right? So those are the important concepts that an organization needs to consider when they're building out their program. Does it have the space for those things to happen?
Right. And I would add one thing as you're saying that, I just wrote it down, and it's a mutual respect. This is not a
Mm-hmm.
friendship. Like, we're not putting together like a friendship where you've got to, you're going to hang out on weekends. You actually don't
Yeah,
really want it that connected. It's more a
good point.
mutual respect and professionalism, and I can respect you as who you are and what you've accomplished, and then you can respect me for my ambition and drive and wanting to go further. Does that make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be It's not a dating app. It's not a swipe right,
Right.
swipe left. This is, if there's mutual respect there, that will help, and that will help build the trust as well.
Yeah, and would you say it's on the mentor to put those safeguards, those guardrails, those boundaries up when they begin that relationship with the mentee?
Yeah, I would say the mentor has to understand they're in command of this whole thing from the beginning, right? It's not up to the mentee. The mentor is guiding. The mentor is molding. The mentor is the one who's in command. So it is up to them. It's their responsibility to follow whatever frameworks you put in order to hold the mentees accountable, if that's part of what you want them to do, to guide, to do all of that, and to keep the mentee from kind of, you know, getting into the like, hey, let's go drinking Saturday night. That kind of thing is like, let's keep it professional. Let's keep this. And I always tell people, keep it on purpose, right?
Yes,
On
purpose.
purpose.
I love that. Well, I have one final question for you as we wrap up. Believe it or not, we're coming to a close, and I still have
Wow.
so many other things that I could talk to you about, but maybe I can get you back for a part two.
I was going to say, we can always do a part two. Happy to do that.
Great, great. So my final question for you is, what is the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced, whether it's related to the work that you're doing or anything outside of that?
It's a great question. And, if I put my attention on it, I would have to say my biggest paradigm shift is I don't know anything. And if I keep that mindset of I don't know anything, what I found for me is it opens up. And so, speaking to mentorship, it opens up the opportunity for mentors to come into my life. Because the minute I say, well, no, I already know that, or I already know how to do this, or I already know how to do that, or I understand what this means, I'm closing everything off. But when I really look at it, and it's funny enough, this is something that a mentor taught me, was just, you don't know anything. And I believe in Zen, they call it the beginner's mind, right? Where you just look at everything as if you're a beginner. So for me, it's allowed these people who may be more experienced, further along the path than I am, to show up in my life, because now I've opened the door and said, well, I don't know anything. So come on in and guide me a little bit. And the results have been amazing, truly amazing, because it's opened a lot of doors. People have shown up, and for me, it's a lot more fun because, you know, I do learn new stuff every day. It's almost like, have you ever watched a movie several times? It's one of your favorite movies. It's on cable every weekend, and you just flip it on while you're, doing stuff around the house. And then you hear something in the movie, and you're like, I've seen this thing 8 times, and I've never heard that before. Same thing when you tell yourself you don't know anything. It opens up where, like, you may have heard something before, but maybe not in that way. And it has a
Yeah,
new, deeper meaning for you. So that's been the biggest one for me recently.
that's so powerful. I mean, when you approach life with the open mind, a level of curiosity and humility, right? Like
Mhm.
not claiming your stake in knowing everything.
Yeah.
It just gives you so many opportunities for building more knowledge and deepening your perspective. And then you have more wisdom that you can share forward. I love that. And there's a couple correlations as you were saying that you caused me to have a paradigm shift around. And I'll just share quickly. I train in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and there was
Oh, wow.
different levels of belts that you get to earn as you go through with your time on the mat and your experience and your technique. And there is so much that you learn throughout these levels and these different belts, but you learn from others in the space, like in the academy, for example. And one of the things that sparked me when you said something about humility was, once it takes about 10 years to get to black belt, which is the top level. And typically they say when you get to a black belt, that's when you start all over again.
Yes.
When you're at a black belt, that's when you almost like take everything you've learned and you throw it away, and you act as if you're learning it all over, like you are a student, all over again, and you're just starting from base level. I love that idea of just kind of going out through life in that way, in that thought process.
Yeah, it's a great way to go. And I have had many, many years of martial arts experience myself. And I used to think black belt was it. It was the finish line. You got there.
Right.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you realize, well, there's actually levels of black belt, and you can become an instructor, or you can compete, or you could do, whatever it is. So yeah, it's served me well, to just kind of drop that and look at everything as there is no top. There is no they're there. There is no finish line. It's just continually growing and learning, and then everything becomes new every day.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Eric. Can't
Sure.
wait for to have you back on a part two.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and it was a blast being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to leave a review, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening. If you know a business leader in practice or friend who you think would be interested in this episode, please consider sharing it with them. I am so grateful for your support. For more updates, you can follow us at Paradigm Shifts Podcast on Instagram. See you on the next episode.